Hello everyone, I'm Tom Morton. Today I'm going to be sharing with you an update about the solar system that we installed in our RV in early 2018. We've gotten a lot of requests for an update of how the system is performing, and we have a ton of frequently asked questions that I'm going to be trying to answer in today's video as well. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, we did a 3-part series on installing our solar system in our RV earlier this year. The basis of our system is 1200 watts of solar on the roof of our RV, a Tesla battery module storing the energy, and a 3000 watt Victron Multi+ hybrid inverter powering all the outlets. We've been using the system now for over 8 months, almost exclusively off-grid, and overall it's been performing exactly as it should. The first question most of you ask is, what exactly does that performance look like? Well, for us, that means that if we have a sunny day, we get all the power that we need to run all of our electronics and even cook and use some high-powered appliances on the system. So that means on the battery alone, we can run 3000 watts worth of electronics in the RV. We run our computers, we frequently run the microwave, we have an induction cooktop that we cook almost exclusively on if it's a sunny day. We run our Instant Pot, and we've even heated the inside of the RV on cool nights sometimes when we know we have a sunny day the next day coming up. While 3000 watts is our limit on the battery, it is a hybrid inverter, so we can combine it with a generator to get considerably more power. Doing that, we're easily able to run our air conditioning, our convection oven, and pretty much anything else we'd want to run. Overall, the performance has been outstanding. We hardly even feel like we're off-grid anymore. The RV just works as if we're plugged in. Now, as we descend into fall and we're seeing considerably cloudier skies and tons of rain here in the Midwest, we have had a few days where the solar system has not kept up. With days on end of cloudy skies here in the Midwest, we have had to run the generator a few times to boost the battery back up, but we've found it's only really like once or twice a week usually. Even on cloudy days, we usually can get a couple hundred watts off the system and at least hold the battery steady all day so that it only dips down at night. A lot of you ask, how much battery capacity do you use at night? Well, under heavy usage like we have now, where we're running the computers late into the night, all our lights and everything, it's not uncommon for us to get into the 60% range of our set charge on our battery. Now, because our battery is basically variable in its charge state and we don't charge it up all the way, that's typically using around 70 to 80 amp hours worth of power every evening. That's at 24 volts, so you're talking around 140 to 160 amp hours, 12 volt equivalent every evening. It's usually around 2 kilowatt hours of usage. We use about that same amount during the day. Our average kilowatt hour usage is around 4 kilowatt hours per day. And if we have even partial sun for part of the day, our solar system can easily make that amount of power. Pushing the solar system by running the air conditioning for a long period of time, we've seen our system generate above 8 kilowatt hours in one day over the summer, however. As we talked about in an earlier video, we utilize the Victron system, and it has the Bluetooth app which can show us how much power we're making, and it actually has a history chart as well that you can scroll back in time and see how much power you've generated over the past month. On really cloudy days, the past couple days, we've only been generating about 1.5 kilowatt hours. If we get a little bit of sun, we usually can get around 3 kilowatt hours worth of power per day. That will not get our battery fully charged, but that's the beauty of the lithium battery systems, is you really don't have to get the battery charged ever. Our battery voltage on these cloudy days hangs a bit lower, usually around 23 volts max if we're not charging all the way up, and that's perfectly fine. Some of you have asked how low we've taken the system, and we really haven't gone that low because the solar system usually is able to keep up, but we've had the battery get down into the 20% of our settings, down around 20 volts or so, and at that point we usually turn the generator on for a little while to bring the charge back up. Let's talk briefly about the settings for our system. We run the Tesla 24 volt battery module, and the primary charging means for that system is the solar system. For general usage, we charge the battery to 24 volts, setting the absorption limit in our app to 24 volts, and we set the float at 23.98 volts. Once the battery reaches that 24 volts limit in bulk, we drop the voltage 0.02 volts, and it holds that voltage really well. What that pretty much allows is for the charging to pretty much stop at the battery, and all the power basically flows directly through our system from the solar system. And we've seen this work pretty well. Typically we can see once it's fully charged, the charge will drop down to like 1 or 2 watts, almost nothing into the battery, and just maintain our power usage throughout the day. We have boosted the voltage to 24.5 volts again, with 0.02 volts float below that. That works really well if we need a little bit of extra power, but we tend to run around 24 volts as it's plenty of power for us. We've also dropped it down to around 23.5 volts when we're not going to use the RV for extended periods of time. Keeping away from the extreme full charge and full discharge is going to make your battery last the longest. So that's why we kind of keep it in mind and basically think about how much power we're actually going to need and change the voltages to the batteries accordingly. For our inverter, we set it once. It's set at 24 volts to charge the battery up, and we really don't mess with that. 24 volts charge, again 0.02 volts below that for float, and that's been working really great, but we hardly ever use the inverter to charge the battery, only really to boost it up with the generator when we're off grid and we've had a whole bunch of cloudy days in a row. If we are hooked up to shore power, we basically don't run the inverter, we bypass it. We designed our system so we could bypass the inverter completely and run all the outlets in our RV from the shore power. However, the 24 volt and 12 volt systems are still operated from the battery, and the solar system takes care of the rest of that. Our fridge runs on DC, so the fridge stays on the battery and on solar all the time, and so do all our 12 volt lights and appliances in the rig. If we had to, we could keep that battery topped off with the inverter charger and bypass power through it. However, that's just not really something we've ever had to do, and again, we're primarily off-grid with our RV. We set our inverter's maximum input to around 11 amps so that we can run our little Honda generator at a relatively easy load for it and charge the battery still relatively quickly. We've had the question asked if we've made any modifications to the system, and no, we haven't changed anything except for I've added one breaker in line to between the inverter and our main panel. I'll highlight that in our schematic. I added a 30 amp breaker because I realized that when the inverter is combining power with the generator, it could provide more power than the size of the wires that I supplied with the inverter. That's something I might upsize in the future, but again, 30 amps is more than adequate for our needs in our RV. Our RV only has one air conditioner, and we don't have an electric water heater anymore, so there's really no need for really high powered appliances in our RV. One of the things we've done to make our RV more off-grid friendly with electricity is to try to minimize the electrical usage across the RV in general. That's another question we get, is how do you dump excess power if we no longer have a water heater? Using your water heater, electric water heater in an RV, is a great way to store up some of your excess solar energy by using a set of contacts in a battery management relay or something to click it on when your batteries are fully charged and dump that solar energy into your hot water tank. Basically, we don't do anything with the excess power anymore. If we're fully charged, we just kind of think about power as we have all that we need. So we run our cooktop, we charge batteries up, drill batteries, anything else that we need, and we just basically use all the power that we want when we're fully charged. And that's kind of how we use excess power. Otherwise, it doesn't really go to waste because it's just not being used, but we aren't trying to maximize the solar system all the time. And that's also going to hopefully make our charge controller last even longer if we're not hammering it full load all day long, all the time. Now I'm going to pull up a list of questions that you guys have sent us over the months. These are in no particular order. First question is, how has the heating pad and system for the battery been working? That has been working fantastic, although we have not used it a whole lot. We've only been below freezing and near freezing temperatures a couple times since we installed this system. I have a heating pad that sits up against the battery that's around 30 watts, so it's a very low power draw, but that is enough. We do have the box the battery's in sort of insulated a little bit, and that seems to be plenty. It's been keeping the battery perfectly warm in the 50-60 degree range wherever I've set it. We'll find out this winter, but so far we haven't had any problems with the battery heating pad. A lot of you ask, why don't we use the coolant system in the battery to actually heat and cool it? Well, it's just a lot more complexity to run a fluid system and heat and try to cool it. And we barely touch the surface of how much power this battery can supply, and we just never see heating from the battery during our usage. The max we draw from it is maybe around 100 amps, and even doing that for an extended period of time, we haven't seen no heating in the battery module itself. Next question, one Tesla module seems cool, but couldn't you hack an entire Tesla pack and utilize the existing BMS? Well, if you wanted an enormous amount of power, you could hack the entire Tesla pack and put the whole thing in your RV. I am not gonna attempt that, but if you wanna see someone who has and learn more about that, you can head over to EVTV. Guy's name is Jack Rickard. He has done exactly that and actually sells some modules to be able to take the entire pack and utilize it externally. I think he primarily sells these for off-grid home use, but it may be a really great use to reuse an EV battery in its entirety. A number of you have asked about possibly powering an RV completely electrically for driving sake. That's something as well I'm not going to tackle right now, but it would be a really cool project. I have some ideas around that I might share in the future. Can you use the Tesla pack in a 48 volt system? Yes, you can. These packs are designed, I'm not exactly sure what the voltage in the car is, but it's in the hundreds of volts. You can easily put these packs in series and get considerably higher voltages. I have seen 48 volts used in these packs in forklifts. I've seen a forklift with these battery packs installed in place of its super heavy lead acid packs. Just two of them connected together will run a forklift all day long. We already kind of went over this, but what can you run and how much battery does it use each night? Well, as I said, we pretty much run everything that we want to run, but we have pared back some of our electrical usage. We don't have that water heater anymore. However, our fridge now runs on the battery all the time, and we'll talk about that more in the future. Overall, we're working on trying to make our RV as off-grid comfortable as possible, and we're very close. We have been off-grid all summer long, and a lot of the reason for that is that we have property that we're actually at right now that does not have any utilities, and it's a lot easier for us just to clear a few trees instead of pulling power lines from the grid for our location, and the solar system is making that really comfortable. Can you run the air conditioning? Yes, we can. A lot of times if we need air conditioning, a lot of times it's just to get humidity out of the air, but sometimes we want to really cool it off, and a lot of times we'll start the AC on the battery. It runs perfectly fine off the battery. However, it draws a lot more power than our solar system can put out, so it is going to drain the battery down during the day, and at night it's going to drain it down quickly. Because our inverter is a hybrid, however, after we get the system running, usually I go out and start the generator and it kicks up, and the generator plus the battery, we typically see the battery draw around 300 watts, which could run the AC for hours. It could run it really all evening doing that. If we have enough sun during the day to power that 300 watts, however, we can run the AC all day long off our little 2000 watt Honda without touching the battery at all, and even still charging the battery. You may ask why we don't size the system larger to be able to handle the AC completely from the sun, and a lot of that is that we already waste quite a bit of the power. We don't need it all the time. Oversizing the system would enable us to run more on cloudy days and charge the battery even faster, but we just don't need it. We size the system intentionally so that we will occasionally have to run the generator to use that top end load requirements, but most of the time our solar system meets all of our power requirements. So I would say that we probably run the generator maybe 5% of the time that we used to. Would you do anything different with the install of your solar system? If I had all the money in the world, yes, I probably would. I probably would have done more solar, more batteries, just made the system bigger in general, but we were very cost effective in designing this system. That was one of our biggest limitations, was the cost, which is actually our next question. How much did your system cost? Our system cost us a shy bit over $3,000 to do the entire system, which is a really, really cost-effective system. Keep in mind that we utilized overstock solar panels from somebody that had some extras, so they were considerably cheaper. We utilized an inverter that was actually no longer manufactured. It was an inverter that I got for a really good deal because somebody had purchased it for a project and they never used it, and it was a few years old. And then the battery pack was even used. So combining all these things together, we were able to put a pretty robust system together for a pretty good deal. You might say $3,000 sounds like a lot of money for a solar system, and it is, but again, we spend so much time off grid and we're basically saving that money on campground fees and such that this system is going to pay for itself, not in the actual power generated over time, but in the ability for us to stay in free locations and on our own property without having to pull power from the utility, which would cost us a lot more anyway. Will you add more solar? Maybe someday. I might consider doing larger panels or adding a secondary system. We have that 24 to 12 volt converter system. I've been thinking about adding a small 12 volt lithium battery and doing a secondary system off maybe one 300 watt panel, just to keep our 12 volt system separate if we can. I don't know. We don't have any plans at this time to upgrade the system, but we'll definitely let you know if we do. Since you jumpered the 120 volt inverter for your 50 amp 240 volt system, did you consider a dual inverter split phase inverter? No, we really didn't. When we were designing the system, again, we're keeping the costs down and the complexity down. But I have assisted with installations with dual or 240 volt split phase inverters. If you want a full 50 amp capacity, maybe you've got a 240 volt appliance in your RV, like a maybe a washer dryer unit or something, maybe that would be right for you. But for our application, we just didn't need it. So we really didn't consider it. If I were to do a 240 volt setup, I probably would do a dual inverter setup because you have the redundancy of having an extra inverter. Both Victron, Magnum, and a few others have the capability to take two inverters and basically hook them together and create true split phase 240 volts AC from them. Doing it this way, if one were ever to fail, you could just quickly rewire the system, or at least half of your system would still be operational. Have you considered, or could you put a power wall in an RV? In theory, yes, you could put a power wall in an RV. I believe that they're stated that they have to be vertically installed, however, and that's going to be a severe limitation in space in an RV. Personally, seeing the Powerwall 2 and how it combines the solar and the battery and everything into one, I think it would be an amazing battery solution for an RV. Someday, if somebody's getting rid of one, which I don't know why they would, because they're kind of permanently installed in houses and probably intended to be there until they die. I don't think it'll be very easy to ever get my hands on one, but someday that might be a pretty fun hack. Does the 24 to 12 volt converter use power, and is there any benefit to doing this? So I primarily went with the 24 volt system because I wanted to use this battery and it was a 24 volt battery, but there are significant benefits to going with a 24 volt system in that I didn't have to run near as big a wire size. I could half the wire size across the system. The inverter tends to run a little bit more efficient at the higher voltages, and I can run a considerably smaller solar charge controller with the size system that we're at because we're running at those higher voltages. All this actually helped keep the cost of the system down, but also the efficiency improvements, they probably all kind of wash out. I'm not exactly sure what our efficiency would be against a 12 volt system, but if you're gonna go with higher powered applications, anything really above 3000 watts, you kind of have to go with a higher voltage. You could do a split phase system with two different inverters and get twice the power out of it, but at that point, you might as well go with a higher voltage system because then you can run much smaller battery cables. We do convert the 24 volt to 12 volt for lighting applications and small DC loads in the RV, and there is a bit of a loss there. I believe it's around a 96% efficient converter. I've measured it, it runs around 2 watts with the power just at idle with no load on it, so there is a little bit of a loss there, but compared to the size of our system, it's really almost negligible. So that's where I'm going to leave off today's questions. If you guys have more questions and enjoyed this, I could probably do another one of these videos in the future. There is so much more I can talk about this system and solar power in general, and we're gonna probably be covering some of that in the future. While our solar system has been working really well and we haven't had any problems with it, they can be problematic occasionally. You could have something, you know, go wrong, not work quite right. The big challenge with a solar system is that you're basically running your own power generating plant all the time. It's not for everybody, but if you want to take it on, solar can be really awesome. It's been great for us. It has enabled us to be off-grid comfortably all the time. And in general, we love it. As always, thank you so much for watching. Please like this video, and we hope you subscribe to our channel for more videos like this and to follow our travel adventures. We'll see you next time. Bye.